When I realized my stepmom was holding me back, I took drastic action. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. She slid my acceptance letter into her purse like it belonged there. I was standing in the kitchen in grease-stained work pants, still smelling like burnt oil and onion fries from the dinner rush, when the mail dumped through the slot like a tired sigh. The envelope was thick, unmistakable university crest, the night class program I'd chased for 3 years between double shifts. Valerie caught it mid-fall with this perfect hostess smile, the one that made neighbors say adjectives like polished and elegant, while forgetting the way her eyes audited the room. "I'll sort the stack," she said softly, already stacking my future beneath catalogs for seasonal wreaths. My name, Alexander James Rivera, peeked out like a breath you hold too long. I'm 28, an auto tech by day and line cook when the shop slows, paying down the $2,000 I still owe and inching toward a degree that might lift me off the floor. I don't have a safety net. I have night classes, a toolbox, and a grandmother who still keeps my late mom's recipes inside a coffee tin. That letter was what I stood to lose. Time I could never get back, and a version of me that might finally not smell like fryer oil at midnight. "Val, that one's mine," I said. "University registrar." She tilted her head. "I'll bring it to your father. We handle important documents together." Father, Mark, loves that sentence because it means he doesn't have to choose. He hates scenes, hates even the shadow of embarrassment, which is why our home has never hosted conflict longer than a TV commercial. "I need it for enrollment deadlines," I said. "They email too, don't they?" she replied, smoothing the edge. "You miss so many." "I miss none. What I miss gets rerouted." The air felt staged, fragrant lemon cleaner, framed diplomas, the staged comfort throw. She pivoted toward the study. My throat caught. I thought of the hours changing brake pads and arguing with frozen bolts, of taking apart what refuses to move. "Valerie now," I said, heat rising. "It has my name." She smiled in that careful way that makes you doubt your own name, and slipped the envelope into her purse like it belonged to her schedule. She turned the lock on the study door, and I heard paper tear with surgical confidence. "Grandma Ruth says grief can be a slow leak that you start calling normal." After my mom died when I was 16, Valerie arrived with casseroles, calendars, and the tone of someone who can't stand loose ends. Dad swore he had met a miracle. "We need structure," he told me, which was code for, "I'm drowning and she floats." She didn't just organize drawers, she organized narratives. "Alex is practical," she'd say to church ladies, smiling. "Hands like his father's." When I said I wanted to study systems engineering, night school, nothing flashy, she called it charming. "The world needs steady," she told me, and then recommended I delay until we stabilize. Stabilize became the permanent season we lived in. If I pushed, she worried about my stress. When I paused, she admired my humility. Her praise curved like a shepherd's crook, soft until you felt the pull. The recent wound came 2 weeks ago at our patio neighbors mingle. Valerie does backyard diplomacy like it's an Olympic sport. I arrived late from work, hands raw, smelling like degreaser. She laughed lightly and told Mrs. Quinn I just can't keep a calendar straight, which is why she helps with my emails. Everyone nodded at the efficiency, at the idea that I'm a lovable mess, while my phone, cooled from the oven of missed notifications, sat full of ghosts I never received. When I drifted near her circle, she teased that I was the right kind of ambitious about not overreaching. The crowd chuckled like a glass wind chime. Later, I told Dad it cut. He pulled at his cuff and said, "She just jokes, kiddo. Keeps things light." I wanted to ask if light meant hollow. I wanted to say that being underestimated slowly rearranges your bones. Instead, I rinsed wine glasses, and Valerie thanked me with a pat that felt like being filed. "You're such a helper," she said, and turned back to conversation. I tucked the word in my pocket like a sharp pebble, a weight you pretend not to feel. When I lay awake that night, I realized there's a difference between being steady and being stalled. The first is a virtue, the second is a cage painted a courteous white. The next morning, a scholarship committee wrote, "We regret your withdrawal," and my stomach fell straight through the floor. "We received your withdrawal form signed by your guardian." The email read, dated last Tuesday at 9:14 a.m. I was under a car at 9:14 a.m., coaxing a stripped lug nut like a truce. I wiped grease on a towel and stared until the words fuzzed. Guardian. I'm 28. I walked out back behind the shop, where the dumpsters face a weedy fence, and called the number at the bottom of the email. A hold music fluted. When Ms. Patel answered. Her voice was calm in the way of people who've seen paperwork invent realities. We have a release of information and a withdrawal request, she said. Signed by Valerie Rivera, designated parental representative. My mouth tasted like pennies. I never authorized that, I said. FERPA requires your consent beyond dependent status, she replied, careful. We have an addendum. Dated last year. I'm good with bolts. Documents are a different torque. Can I fax you my ID and rescind? I asked. You can, she said. But if there's a guardianship or power of attorney on file, we'll need to see court documents. At lunch, I drove to Dad's house. Valerie opened the door with that polished concern that makes you feel rude for being upset. Alex, she cooed, you look tired. Where's my letter? I asked. Which letter? She was already floating toward the kitchen, already plating fruit. University, I said. Registrar. Acceptance. She frowned at the bowl. Oh, honey, that was just a conditional. They send those to everyone. There were errors. I'll call them. I stepped between her and the drawer. Let me call them, I said. Her smile thinned. We can't have you making a scene with your father's name on the line. Dad appeared behind her, tie loosened. What's going on? He asked, like he'd walked into a stage play and wasn't sure of his part. Alex is anxious about paperwork, Valerie answered, light as dust. He's overwhelmed. I felt something final in me stand up. I'm not overwhelmed, I said slowly. I'm being overwritten. Valerie's hand hovered near the drawer again, and for the first time I saw the second key on her ring catch the light like a blade. I waited until Valerie left for her Pilates class, then parked 2 streets over and walked back like a meter reader. The study door was locked, but the old window latch over the herb garden still stuck on humid days. Mom showed me that when I was 12 and we'd sneak cookies before dinner. Inside, the air smelled like citrus and printer toner. I opened the drawers she pretended weren't mine. A leather folio with tabbed sections, a stack of glossy charity mailers, a neat pile of to-do. Family. My name appeared as a bullet under 3 headings. School, employment, mail. School had timelines, deadlines highlighted, then a tidy note. Withdraw if grants contingent on independent status, avoid dead optics. Employment listed 2 companies I'd interviewed with last fall, each with a checkmark and the word contacted. Mail had a copied USPS form, hold mail authorization, Alex, and a second, at authorized agent, Valerie. My chest went hollow. She had engineered bottlenecks and then patted my shoulder when I stumbled. I snapped photos with my phone, hands trembling, a mechanic photographing the hairline crack that makes the engine scream. In the bottom drawer, I found the acceptance letter, slit open and paperclipped to a memo from the registrar. The memo had a yellow sticky on it in her handwriting. Manage, Mark worried about stress. It wasn't stress. It was control wearing a cardigan and calling it self-care. I replaced everything exactly, except one photocopy, an information release addendum, bearing a wobbly version of my signature and a date I remembered because that day I'd been on a 12-hour shift and fell asleep in my clothes. I heard the garage door rumble and put the window back like a scene I couldn't afford to leave crooked, heart pounding against the glass. Dad was on the driveway rolling trash bins when I stepped out like a magician who'd used his last trick. Hey, champ, he said, as if every word had to be agreeable enough to pass the homeowners association. Got a minute? I asked. He glanced at his watch, reflexively checking if the conversation would fit inside his day. Sure. We sat on the curb, because neither of us could handle the theater of the living room. Did you sign anything naming Valerie my guardian? I asked. His eyes clicked shut. It's not guardianship, he said. It's an administrative help. She said you'd be relieved. I'm 28. I repeated, the number dull like a socket wrench you've used too long. He twisted his wedding band. It was just to streamline things while you worked nights. College stuff is complicated. It's complicated because someone is rearranging it, I said, and told him about the withdrawal, the addendum, the mail hold. He winced at each noun like it was a bill in the wrong envelope. Valerie said you asked her to handle deadlines, he offered weakly. She said you were overwhelmed. The words sat between us, sticky and useful to everyone but me. What if she's wrong? I asked. What if I'm capable? He didn't answer, and I realized his silence wasn't neutral. It voted for the person who relieved him of choosing. Grandma Ruth called then, a coincidence that felt like a lifeline. You sound like a kettle, she said. Come by. When I arrived, she already had the coffee tin open, the one with Mom's index cards and a few documents kept like promises. Your mother named me as your educational contact until you turned 18, she said, tapping a brittle paper. Nothing beyond that. Valerie asked me to hand over our family files last year. I told her only when I'm Ash. Grandma looked at me over her bifocals. If someone holds a net beneath you, be sure it's not also a leash. I think Valerie forged my consent, I said, and Grandma's mouth became a straight line that could cut anything. The first hard clue arrived from a direction I didn't expect. HR at Bendix Tools, where I'd been a finalist last November. I called from the parking lot of the community college, staring at the mural that says dreams work when you do. We show you withdrew your application, the HR manager said. By email from your address, copying a guardian. What address? I asked. She read it. Alex. R. Workdesk at Gmail. I've been Alex. R. Rivera for everything, forever. Could you forward that email thread? I asked, voice steady like a jack under a car you pray will hold. She hesitated, then agreed to redact internal notes and send. The reply landed like a verdict, a professional-sounding message, my name at the bottom, and a CC to Valerie's account. The cadence wasn't mine. The attached withdrawal letter used phrases Valerie loved, like optics and pending personal obligations. I scanned the headers. The IP address wasn't mine either. I took screenshots, metadata, and all, like a crime scene photographer in coveralls. Back home, I turned my nightstand drawer into a case file. Manila folder labeled Valerie, Access. Inside, the withdrawal email, a photo of the USPS hold form, the information release addendum, and the registrar memo. I added a page for phone numbers. Ms. Patel's direct line at the aid office. A postal inspector hotline. An elder law attorney Grandma knew from church. I wasn't planning to sue. I was planning to be believed. Being sabotaged in slow motion is like standing ankle-deep in wet cement. You don't notice you're stuck until someone tells you to run. I printed everything because paper talks without batteries. At 6:12 p.m. My phone lit with a blocked number and a mechanical voice said there had been changes to your account settings, then hung up like a shadow ducking a camera. I went to campus early and found Ms. Patel's office tucked behind a poster about grants. She greeted me like someone who understood bureaucracy as both shield and sword. Bring what you have, she said, and I spread the file across her desk. She examined the addendum first. This addendum claims you authorized release for academic decisions and account actions, she said carefully. Signature, unusual. Date aligns with our system entry, but the upload came from a non-student portal. Meaning? I asked. Meaning it didn't come from your login. She tapped her keyboard. It came from an IP we flagged as Parent Liaison Convenience Access, which is a polite way of saying someone used a backdoor they shouldn't. She printed a verification request. We'll freeze any third-party access until you confirm in person with ID. My lungs loosened a fraction. Then she frowned at the memo. This note, avoid dead optics, weirdly mirrors a phrase in an email we got last term withdrawing you from a grant interview. She turned her monitor to show a line. Withdrawal requested due to stress and optics. That read like a signature she never signed. Do I have a case? I asked, hearing the tremor I hate. You have facts, she said. Cases come after facts become patterns. She slid me a form. Fill this out. It documents suspected unauthorized access. I signed. Outside, I called the postal inspector. The agent explained that mail holds require signatures, but authorized agents sometimes get added with flimsy verification. File online and bring ID to the branch, he said. At the branch, the clerk looked apologetic. There's an agent listed, she said, lowering her voice. Valerie Rivera. Remove her, I said. Add no one. The clerk nodded and printed a confirmation. I watched the printer like it was minting my independence. Back in my car, I stared at the confirmation and realized the mailbox key on Valerie's ring wasn't a paranoia. It was a plan with a keyhole I'd finally noticed. After work, I went to the storage unit Mom rented before she got sick, the one Grandma kept paying on because One day you'll want those boxes. The guy at the desk remembered her and waved me through. Dust rose in gold sheets when I rolled up the door. There were baby photos, school art, a busted guitar. In a banker's box labeled legal, I found the original of that old educational contact form naming Grandma, and beneath it, Mom's letter to Dad dated 2 months before she died. If you ever remarry, she wrote, do not let anyone shrink Alex to fit their comfort. I took a photo, hands shaking. In another box, I found a stack of mail addressed to me at Dad's house from the year after he'd remarried. Letters Grandma must have tucked away when she suspected something was off. A scholarship invitation. A workshop acceptance with a travel stipend. All opened, each with a sticky note in a different handwriting. We'll revisit next term. The handwriting wasn't mine. I drove to Grandma's with the box and dumped its contents on her table. She ran a finger down Mom's letter and sighed like the air had been heavy for years and just admitted it. Your mother could see around corners, she said. I can't force your father to wake up, but I can hold a flashlight. We made a plan right there. I'd consolidate the proof, let Ms. Patel initiate the internal review, and set a meeting Dad would attend without Valerie. He'll bring her, I said. Grandma smiled like a person who has negotiated with stubborn men before. Invite him for pie here on Sunday, she said. Men will skip a confrontation, but they'll rarely skip pie. Sunday came with cinnamon and dread, and at exactly 4 o'clock Valerie walked in ahead of Dad, smiling like she owned the room and the story that would be told inside it. I stopped waiting for permission and started drafting a plan like a wiring diagram. Step 1. Lock down my accounts. I changed passwords, added physical keys, and set alerts on every login like tripwires in a hallway. Step 2. Assemble a clean timeline Ms. Patel could float to compliance. Dates, emails, IP headers, the USPS removal slip, the HR thread from Bendix. I printed duplicates and stashed a set at Grandma's in the coffee tin beneath Mom's lemon bars card. Because if movies taught me anything, it's that originals go missing when truth gets inconvenient. Step 3. Record. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I verified, wrote the statute number on a sticky, and set my phone to auto-record calls I initiated. Step 4. Invite Dad to an appointment Ms. Patel scheduled for Wednesday. General enrollment questions, and ask him to come alone because I needed his memory on a few family forms. No lies, just the cleanest possible truth. Grandma practiced lines with me the way she once practiced spelling words. Short sentences, she said, like socket clicks. Tight. Done. Next. I lay awake that night rehearsing. I pictured Valerie's folio, the way she paperclipped my future like a recipe she didn't plan to cook. I pictured Dad's face when the projector showed her phrases in other people's mail. What scared me wasn't the fight. It was the possibility he'd look relieved if I just let her keep steering. At lunch the next day, I called the number on Valerie's USPS form and asked for the clerk by name, then recorded as she confirmed who added the agent and when, reading the internal note aloud like a bell tolling. Tomorrow, I would press record and make her narrative stutter. Sunday pie turned into a theater I hadn't rehearsed for. Valerie arrived with flowers and a cake stand she never returns, cooing at Grandma's curtains, arranging forks like she paid rent on the atmosphere. Alex, she said sweetly, I've been thinking about your future. Let's create a plan. Her voice had that fundraiser glaze, sincere enough to pass, thick enough to hide a ledger. Dad hovered near the mantel, hands in his pockets, eyes wet with dread. Grandma set the pie down like a gavel. Eat first, plan later, she said. We ate. Valerie complimented the crust, then launched into a kindness blitz. She'd spoken to a contact about a training program, drafted a budget for me to feel secure, even flagged deadlines so I wouldn't overstrain. Every sentence was a ribbon around a box with a lock inside. I sipped water and said, I've scheduled a meeting with Ms. Patel Wednesday. Dad's coming. Valerie smiled, teeth barely showing. Wonderful, loop me in. It's student privacy, I said. I need to set boundaries. She paused, like a surgeon considering which vein to sever. Boundaries are healthy, she agreed. For the impulsive. Dad flinched. Grandma asked if anyone wanted coffee, code for stop flattering the knife. When we stood to leave, Valerie grazed my arm with nails lacquered the color of fake cherries, and her whisper slid under my skin like a splinter I couldn't pinch. Then Valerie leaned in and whispered, Stop. or I end you. I didn't sleep much before Wednesday. I sorted evidence by verbs. Added, withdrew, held, signed, copied. Ms. Patel booked a small conference room with a wall screen, and I arrived early with the spare folder, the one I could lose without losing everything. Dad walked in at 2:55, tie straight, jaw tight. This necessary? He asked quietly. It is, I said, not adding that necessary and kind aren't always friends. Ms. Patel introduced herself and explained, in low, warm tones, that we were reviewing access records. She asked me to show ID, then clicked a tab labeled Access Log. Here, she said, pointing to the IP of the Parent Liaison Convenience portal. Here and here. Dad's hands made small fists on his knees, like he was trying to fold himself smaller. Ms. Patel pulled up the email withdrawing me from the grant interview last fall. The subject line, withdrawal to preserve optics, sat like a neat bruise. She read a sentence aloud, then displayed the USPS confirmation I'd obtained. We've removed third-party mail authorization, she added, and frozen non-student portal actions pending verification. Outside the glass wall, students laughed by a vending machine, regular life clinking through. I told Dad we'd invited him because I wanted him to hear it in a room where facts outshouted charm, not in a kitchen where charm owns the knives. At 3 o'clock sharp, Valerie walked in and saw the projector. She arrived with a smile big enough to flood a room, and when it didn't work, she smiled bigger. So official, she said lightly, taking a seat. Ms. Patel explained the agenda, voice professional enough to cut glass. We're reviewing questionable third-party actions on Mr. Rivera's account, she said. Valerie's eyes did a quick arithmetic of exits and audience. Everything I do is with love, she said, aiming at Dad. Ms. Patel clicked to the email headers. The projector lit an IP address that matched the addendum upload, and the redacted Bendix thread bloomed beside it like a weed finally named. Valerie's nostrils flared, the tiniest tell. That email is Alex's, she said. We made it together so I could help. Without my consent, I said. You asked for help, she countered. You were drowning. I was pressured, I said. There's a difference. Ms. Patel clarified FERPA, the boundary between information and decision, the difference between advocacy and impersonation. Then came motive. Avoid dead optics, she read, a phrase that appears across multiple communications from you. Valerie laughed, a brittle sound. Mark's name is on local boards, she said. Do you want him embarrassed by your debt? Dad shifted. The mask slipped. You mean your optics, I said. You mean controlling the frame. Ms. Patel displayed the USPS note with Valerie listed as agent and the clerk's readback recording time-stamped yesterday. She turned on me like a blade that finally chose honesty. Valerie's voice dropped its sugar and found steel. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You begged me after your mother died to manage chaos. I was 16, I said. You were 40, and you liked the keys. Dad whispered my name, but Ms. Patel kept her hand on the mouse like a conductor refusing to yield the tempo. We'll open an internal review, she said. Third-party access is suspended, and any suspect withdrawals will be reversed pending your written intent. Valerie stood. We're done here, she declared. Ms. Patel didn't blink. We are, after documentation. She slid 2 forms toward me, a complaint and an affidavit. I signed both with a hand that wanted to shake and refused. Outside, Dad walked like his shoes hurt. She was trying to help, he muttered, voice hoarse. She was trying to stage manage, I said. Are you embarrassed by me, or by being seen not in control? He didn't answer. That night, Ms. Patel emailed that the grant interview could be reinstated and that the University Council had flagged the addendum as invalid. The postal inspector sent a reference number. The elder law attorney called Grandma back and said the phrase unauthorized agency twice like a hinge creaking open. My car smelled like fryer oil and paper when I finally crashed on my futon, the folder under my pillow like a guard dog with paper teeth. That night, someone jiggled my doorknob and breathed through the keyhole. The knob stilled after I called out, and footsteps faded. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I bought a cheap door bar and a second deadbolt, then texted my landlord photos because paper trails make bullies trip. At work, I changed a timing belt while my brain ran a different loop. What comes after confrontation? Ms. Patel confirmed the freeze held. Bendix reopened my candidacy for a later cohort. The USPS agent emailed that the authorized agent was removed and that any future change required in-person ID. I printed that email and taped it inside the coffee tin lid like a blessing. Then I scheduled therapy through the community clinic, Thursdays at 6, a slot between my two selves. Valerie attempted a different campaign. 3 texts about family heartbreak, 2 voicemails offering to fund a bridge period, 1 email titled "For Your Own Good." I didn't reply. Grandma did. "Your good is not a synonym for your control," she wrote, and copied Dad. He called me that evening. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Just us." We met on a park bench behind the middle school, where the air smelled like cut grass and whistle plastic. He stared at his hands. "I let her fix things so I wouldn't have to face them," he said. I told myself it was love. I nodded, because nodding was safer than forgiving, and safer than staying angry forever in a body that had to keep moving. Then my phone buzzed. Dad wanted to meet without her. We met Saturday morning at Grandma's table, 3 mugs and no script. Dad looked older in the quiet. "I called the board chair," he said first. "I told him we're stepping back from public events for a while." He swallowed. "I asked our attorney to review anything Valerie filed that mentions you." He slid a page across. A handwritten note with the sentence I wished I'd heard years ago: "I believe you." It didn't fix a decade, but it changed the air. We talked boundaries. If Dad wanted to help, it would be in writing, signed by me, specific and revocable. No more administrative help slotted between dessert and dishes. I canceled the spare key to my apartment at the locksmith and gave Grandma the emergency contact form the clinic requested. I emailed Ms. Patel a thank you and attached a scanned photo of Mom holding me at 3, a caption for a life I'd finally reclaimed. Then I opened a fresh document and titled it, "Receipts, for anyone who needs them." Inside, I listed what helped: freeze access, paper copies, recorded call summaries, a friend who sits beside you when the projector warms up. I ended with a question for anyone watching who lives in the soft prison of help. When I left, the sun was exactly the color of the pie crust we didn't bake this time, and I realized hope tastes like room to breathe. The door opened, and for once, nobody else answered first.